Standing in his back porch office, Robert sipped his early morning coffee and gazed at his tall trees to the east, just above Powder Lake. The weather had changed dramatically. Although it was still July, the temperatures had dropped from hot to warm to cool, and the rain had been falling off and on for days. In most years, he had put his lawnmower away a month ago, and his yard would have been a close-cropped brown. Not this summer. The yard was a vibrant green, and you'd have to cut the grass after the winds had a good drying effect and the sun came out for a spell. Robert surveyed the sky and the approaching weather signs, but then decided, forget the lawn. Go check the mushroom patch instead. He was richly rewarded. That was the silver lining to the damp, wet weather that Powder River residents had experienced since the scorching hot June of 21, when the thermometers hit 110 degrees in the shade. A new mushroom had made its presence known all throughout the old mat-blowed clear-cut of 1995 that followed the western shore of Powder Lake from the shingle mill all the way to the northernmost shore of 1 Mile Bay. Glistening a brilliant black, moisture coated his gumboots as he went his way through his mature private forest of firs, cedars, maples, and alder. He didn't have far to go. Just 100 meters from his back door, he spotted the vanguard clumps of fried chicken mushrooms, like tight-knit little families. For the last 3 years, they had been the staple of his winter supply. Everywhere he walked, there was another group of clustered edibles. The species, Lyophilum descantes, had been discovered in 1817 by a Scandinavian scientist conveniently named Fries, and was considered to be one of the best edible species in whatever regions it inhabited around the world. The word descantes meant 10, and that was an average number of fried chicken mushrooms in a clump. Their pure white stems arced and twisted out from a single central spot and were topped by smooth light brown caps. With same color white gills underneath, the single specimens within each cluster overlapped one another to form a tight umbrella that could shed rainwater. The clusters were often grouped together to form hamlets of several families or a village that snaked out with dozens of clumps measuring up to 10 or more feet in length. All told, there were often hundreds of individuals in a village, and after picking through one community, one could stand up and survey the immediate area in any direction and often find other nearby hamlets or another village within eyesight. Each of the last 4 years had produced an abundance, and he felt his harvesting was suitably sustainable. The villages sprung up and needed to be collected if the weather remained damp, for they disintegrated quickly unless sunny weather followed. Once they started to deteriorate, they were quickly gone, melting into the soil. Additional cool, wet weather would produce another wave of villagers, often in a new location. Each summer so far had produced several crops. He settled in and started picking. These mushrooms could be plucked out as individuals, but often came out as a clump without affecting next season's growth. He always liked to cut the stems and leave behind mycelium and dirt, placing nothing but clean mushrooms in his bags. Looking back after working through his first village, he scanned the remnant population standing comfortably and well positioned to keep the colony alive and flourishing. While he worked, his mind was free to consider last night's town hall meeting at the library. A cross-section of all ages and gender, with a solid weighting of settlers, many of them generational mill workers, were there to listen to Nellie Silver appease and applaud their efforts. Since the mill shut down, the grieving for the loss of 2,500 jobs in this small city had been ongoing, and now those folks were facing the final insult. Riverlot's hydro plant export policy to the United States was unpleasantly viewed as a betrayal to the community and our province's energy reserves. For the dam, penstock, and turbines that had once been the dynamo in the paper mill's heyday were divorced from our hydro grid. And now the permit was up for renewal, and the perceived intention of Riverlot was they would leave the municipality high and dry with no possibility of inexpensive electricity or backup power for the expected spate of power outages in the months and years ahead. Nellie had rallied petition support against the renewal of the permit, and opposition MP Farron Lund had hounded the government in the House of Commons question period to the extent that a hearing was ordered by the Canadian Energy Commission for a complete review. Several of the attendees at the library meeting would appear as interveners, even though they would not be allowed to speak, only listen during the hearings. And although this was a first in Canada, the pair were not deluded into believing that this was a victory. It was obvious that this was more like a stay of execution. The cabinet minister responsible had the ultimate say, and Riverlot's decades-long lovey-dovey model corporate partnership with government would most likely be the deciding factor. Like so many commissions, parliamentary committees, and review boards, this hearing's most likely outcome would amount to nothing more than the public having had the opportunity to vent their grievances before the government rubber-stamped the permit and gave the oligarchy a victory once again. Business as usual. But Robert knew, like only a few others, that the situation in hand had the potential for great opportunity and mutual satisfaction for all factions. Conditions that could completely heal the wounds of the past and reshape Cathay-Powder River's future were in alignment for the next 100 days. He was determined to do all he could to bring Riverlot, the municipality, and Saama Nation into a state of agreement to bury the hatchet and join together in a revolutionary new industrial initiative called the WATERSHIP Platform. So far, he had been stonewalled. Nobody wanted to listen. Doors were closed. Promises to meet postponed. Calls unanswered. These were artifacts of the fortress mentality and combative, divisive strategies that all participants were engaged in. Their ears were stopped, blinders on their eyes, minds closed. They were hunkering down for confrontation. Everywhere, bad attitudes prevailed. It was as if they had forgotten that combat and war decimate and destroy. This is the way of the old regime. But now, in 2026, right here in Powder River, everything could change. But how to make them see the forest for the trees? How to inspire the right attitude of cooperation, not confrontation? If nothing else, Probert was pragmatic, the quintessential critical thinker. The facts surrounding the WATERSHIP platform don't lie. Here were the points. Fresh water, a resource that was absolutely essential to the continuation of civilization. An 18 trillion liter reservoir of the same, and deep sea anchorages for waterships a few hundred meters from the supply. An industrial zone shoreline ready for redevelopment by the municipality. A corporation with decades of industrial and regulatory experience and know-how in line with the water supply and loaded with electrical power to drive the project. And treaty-driven governance and stewardship from a First Nation primed for reconciliation and partnership in a political climate hungry for that very thing. The mission: manufacture pristine bottled lake water on a repurposed cargo ship, then deliver this high-demand product using the same ship to global markets clamoring for fresh water. One watership has the capability of doubling the amount of profit that comes from the sale of all the power generated by the hydro plant while using less than 1% of the electricity to power the whole watership operation. The consultants and engineers had scrupulously provided the preliminary calculations. So what was the problem? Why couldn't it work? Well, of course, it's too good to be true, but only to the old way of thinking. However, in the 21st century of stacking resources, efficient closed-loop systems, Kardashevian values, it should be a slam dunk. So, show them our mutual assets. Help them see it. Define the path that leads through the long trail of grievances and grudges that are holding them back. And in a flash he had the answer. The upcoming municipal election. He would run for mayor. Yes, he could leverage public exposure by making the WATERSHIP platform his election campaign. Public speaking engagements, press releases, newspaper articles, interviews, media attention. All the doors could open immediately. His bags were full of mushrooms, his mind fully satisfied. Standing up, he shouldered his pack, took another look around, then headed back home to Elf Manor.